Sometimes the most wonderful days end in the most terrible nights, and an act of mercy becomes a death sentence for those we love most. The Carter family home had never seen such excitement. On Friday evening, June 27th, there was an atmosphere of joyful anticipation. Tomorrow, their daughter Kayla was marrying Patrick Lewis, and the whole family was preparing for this long-awaited event. Robert Carter sat in his favorite chair in the living room, glancing from time to time at the guest list his wife Gloria was holding. After 30 years as a supervisor at the post office warehouse, he was used to order and organization, but his daughter's wedding made him more nervous than even the most stressful days at work. 237 people have confirmed their attendance, Gloria said, adjusting her glasses and flipping through the pages of her notebook. As an accountant for an insurance company, she was used to precision in numbers and had no intention of changing that habit even on a day like this. That means we'll need to order 3 more tables at the restaurant. Kayla stood by the window, absent-mindedly watching the evening shadows fall on the trimmed lawn in front of the house. 28 years ago, she was born in this same house, in the upstairs bedroom, and now she was getting ready to start a new life. Her auburn hair was pulled back into a casual bun, and a soft smile played on her face, but an attentive observer would have noticed a slight tension in her movements. "Mom, don't worry so much," she said, turning to her parents. "Patrick said that if necessary, we can ask the restaurant to set up extra seats at the main tables." "Honey, I just want everything to be perfect," Gloria replied, looking up from her notes. "You only get married once, and I want this day to be the most wonderful day of your life." Robert put down his newspaper and got up from his chair. He walked over to his daughter and gently hugged her shoulders. "You know, sweetheart, I feel so proud," he said quietly. "It seems like just yesterday you were running home from school with scraped knees, and today you're a grown woman who will become a wife tomorrow." Kayla leaned against her father, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne and laundry detergent. Working at the children's hospital had taught her to appreciate moments of closeness and warmth like this. "Dad, do you think I made the right decision?" she asked quietly. "With Patrick?" Robert was surprised. "Of course, baby. That guy loves you more than life itself. I see how he looks at you. You can't fake that kind of look." Gloria got up from her seat at the table and joined her husband and daughter. "Kayla, sweetie, what's bothering you? You seem different today. You're usually more composed before important events." "I don't know, Mom. Probably just nerves. Tomorrow is such an important day, after all." Kayla tried to smile, but it came out a little forced. At that moment, Patrick entered the living room. He had come to discuss the final details of tomorrow's ceremony. 31 years old, tall and slender, with kind brown eyes behind thin-rimmed glasses, he worked as a high school history teacher and knew how to connect with people of all ages. "Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Carter," he greeted Kayla's parents. "I hope I'm not interrupting your family meeting?" "Not at all, Patrick," Robert replied, shaking his future son-in-law's hand. "We were just discussing tomorrow's preparations." "How are things at the church? Is Father Brown ready?" "Everything is ready. Father Brown said the ceremony will begin at 2 o'clock sharp. The musicians will arrive an hour before the start to tune their instruments and do a final rehearsal." Kayla walked over to Patrick and took his hand. His palm was warm and dry, as reliable as he was. "How are your parents? Have they arrived from Cleveland yet?" she asked. "Yes, this morning. Mom is worried that she forgot something important at home, of course, and Dad is trying to calm her down. They are staying at a hotel near the church." Gloria glanced at her notes again. "Patrick, do you remember to pick up the flowers from the salon tomorrow morning at 9? And don't forget to check that the photographer has all the necessary addresses." "Everything is under control, Mrs. Carter. I made a list of everything that needs to be done tomorrow and have already checked it 3 times. Robert smiled. "You see, Gloria, I told you Patrick was a reliable guy. He won't forget anything important." They spent another half-hour discussing the details for the next day. Who would be responsible for whom, what time the cars would arrive, and the seating arrangement for the guests in the church. When all the issues had been resolved, Patrick got ready to leave. "Well, see you tomorrow," he said, kissing Kayla on the cheek. "Try to get a good night's sleep. Tomorrow will be a long day." "I will," Kayla replied, walking him to the door. When Patrick left, her parents decided to go to bed as well. Robert had to get up early for work, even on weekends, and Gloria wanted to check all the preparations again in the morning. "Good night, dear," her mother said, hugging her daughter. "And don't worry so much. Tomorrow will be a wonderful day." "Good night, Mom, Dad." Left alone in the living room, Kayla felt the anxiety she had been trying to hide all evening rise to her throat again. She picked up her phone and dialed her best friend Tisha's number. "Hi, it's me. Tish, could you come over and stay with me tonight? I know it's silly, but I don't want to be alone tonight." "Of course, friend. I just finished watching a TV series. I'll be there in half an hour, okay?" "Great. Bring something tasty, and I'll order pizza." Tisha Daniels worked as an administrator at the same medical center as Kayla, but in different departments. They met 3 years ago and became friends right away. Tisha was a year younger than Kayla, but sometimes she seemed older because of her practical outlook on life. 40 minutes later, Tisha stood at the Carters' doorstep with a bag of ice cream in her hands and a big smile on her face. "So, bride-to-be, how are you?" she asked, taking off her jacket. "Are you nervous?" "Terribly. I don't know why, but today I feel like I'm about to take an exam I haven't prepared for." "That's normal. All brides are nervous. Remember how my sister couldn't eat properly for 3 days before her wedding? They settled in the living room with pizza boxes on their laps and a large bag of vanilla ice cream between them. An old romantic comedy was playing on TV, but the girls talked more than they watched. "Do you remember how we met Patrick?" Tisha asked, taking a bite of mushroom pizza. "In the library. He was looking for a book on the history of medicine for his classes, and I was working on my term paper. He came over to ask if I knew where to find the section he needed." "And you knew right away that you liked him?" "Not right away. But when he offered to walk me to my car because it was already dark, I thought to myself that I rarely meet such attentive men." Tisha smiled. "And then you corresponded for 3 months before he decided to ask you out on a date. He's so cautious. He said he didn't want to rush things, but that's exactly what I liked. After..." Kayla didn't finish her sentence, but Tisha understood what she was thinking. "After Joseph, you wanted things to develop slowly." "Yes. With Joe, everything was so fast and so intense. I needed someone calm." At that moment, Kayla's phone vibrated. A notification about a new message appeared on the screen. Kayla glanced at the display and turned pale. "What is it?" Tisha asked, alarmed. Kayla handed her the phone. The screen showed a message from Joseph Robinson. "Don't do this. It's a mistake. You should be with me, oh my God," Tisha whispered. "When did he send this?" "Just now. Look, the time is 11:42 p.m. Tisha looked at her friend with concern. "Kayla, when was the last time you spoke to him?" "About 4 months ago. He called to congratulate us on our engagement. He seemed calm then, even wished us happiness. And now he knows about the wedding tomorrow?" "Probably. Everyone in town is talking about it. And I posted photos of my dress fitting on social media." Kayla put her phone aside and leaned back on the sofa. "Tish, do you think I did the right thing when I broke up with him?" "Kayla, we've discussed this 100 times. You can't spend your whole life second-guessing that decision." "I know, but he loved me so much. And I was just scared." Tisha turned to face her friend. "Tell me again." "From the beginning. I want to understand why it still bothers you." Kayla picked up a pillow and hugged it tightly to her chest. "We met 2.5 years ago at my colleague's birthday party. Joe was working as a mechanic at the same factory he works at now. He was so vibrant, cheerful, energetic, always ready for adventure, the complete opposite of me. And you started dating right away? Almost right away. A week after we met, he invited me on a weekend trip to the lake. At first I refused, we were practically strangers, but he was so persuasive. Kayla fell silent, remembering those days. Tish, it was like in the movies. He gave me flowers every day, arranged surprises, took me to places I had never been before. In 2 months, we traveled halfway across the state. Sounds romantic. Yes, but it was also exhausting. Joe didn't understand that sometimes I just wanted to stay home and read a book. For him, every day had to be a holiday. When did you start living together? 6 months after we met. He rented an apartment near my work and said that now we would see each other every day. I wasn't ready for such a change, but he knew how to insist. Tisha frowned. Did he force you? He didn't force me, but he was very persistent. When Joe wanted something, he wouldn't back down until he got it. He said it was because he loved me so much and couldn't live without me. Did you love him? I thought I did. He was so into me, so passionate. He made me feel special. But gradually I realized that it wasn't a healthy relationship. What happened? He became jealous of everything and everyone. My colleagues, my friends, even my parents. When I stayed late at work, he would come to the hospital and wait for me in his car in the parking lot. He said he was worried. Did you explain to him that a nurse's work is not always predictable? Of course. But he didn't listen. And then the arguments started. He shouted that I didn't love him, that I was cheating on him, that I had someone else. Kayla paused, gathering her thoughts. 6 months before we broke up, he proposed to me. It was so grand, in a restaurant, in front of everyone, with musicians and a huge bouquet of roses. I couldn't say no in front of all those people. And you said yes? Yes, but when I got home, I realized I had made a mistake. We were engaged for 8 months, and those were the hardest months of my life. Why? Joe decided that he now had the right to control my every move. He wanted to know who I was talking to, where I was going, what I was buying. He even started looking through my phone. And you put up with it? I tried to talk to him, to explain that it wasn't right. But every time he promised to change, and then it would happen again. And then he started drinking. Not every day, but on weekends he would drink so much that he became a completely different person. Aggressive. Not physically, but verbally, yes. He would yell at me for hours, accusing me of all kinds of sins. And then he would cry and ask for forgiveness. Kayla put down the pillow and looked out the window. And 3 weeks before the wedding, I realized I couldn't take it anymore. I told him I was breaking up with him and calling off the wedding. How did he react? Horribly. At first he didn't believe me. Then he started begging, then threatening to kill himself. I even called an ambulance when he got drunk and started saying he didn't want to live without me. My God. After that, he called me every day for 3 months. Then he disappeared. And when I met Patrick, he suddenly reappeared. He followed me, came to my house, to my work. I had to ask his friends to talk to him. Did it help? For a while. He hasn't bothered me for the last 6 months. And now, this message. Tisha took her friend's phone and reread the message. Kayla, you have to show this to Patrick. Why? Our wedding is tomorrow. Why ruin his mood? Because if Joseph shows up tomorrow, Patrick needs to be ready. Kayla shook her head. He won't show up. It's just emotions. By morning, he'll sober up and forget about this message. What if he doesn't? Tisha, don't exaggerate. Joe isn't crazy. He's just painfully clingy. He won't hurt me. Tisha looked at her friend doubtfully, but said nothing. They finished their pizza, scraped the ice cream out of the tub, and watched the rest of the movie. But the atmosphere was no longer as light-hearted as it had been at the beginning of the evening. As they went up to Kayla's room to go to bed, the phone vibrated again. This time, another message had arrived from Joseph. I'll be waiting for you tomorrow. You'll realize that we're meant for each other. Kayla quickly deleted both messages and turned off her phone. That's it. No more messages for today, she said, trying to smile. Tomorrow is the most important day of my life, and I won't let anyone ruin it. June 28th began with bright sunlight streaming through the lace curtains in Kayla's bedroom. She woke up before her alarm, around 6:30 a.m., and lay still for a few minutes, listening to the steady breathing of Tisha, who was sleeping next to her on a folding mattress. Today was her wedding day. The thought filled her with both joyful excitement and slight anxiety. Yesterday's messages from Joseph flashed through her mind, but she resolutely pushed those memories away. Nothing was going to cloud her happiness today. Tisha stirred and opened her eyes. "Good morning, bride," she said, stretching. "How did you sleep?" "Surprisingly well," Kayla replied, sitting up in bed. "I thought I'd be tossing and turning all night, but I slept like a baby. That's a good sign. It means you're ready for today." They went down to the kitchen, where Gloria was already bustling about. There were plates of pancakes, fresh fruit, and coffee on the table. "Good morning, girls," she greeted her daughter and her friend. "Kayla, you need to eat a good breakfast. You have a long day ahead of you, and you'll need your strength." Robert was sitting at the table with a newspaper, but it was clear that he wasn't reading it, just holding it in his hands, glancing at his daughter from time to time. "Sweetheart, are you ready to be a wife?" he asked when Kayla sat down next to him. "I'm ready, Dad." "Very ready. Good. And if something goes wrong, remember, you can always change your mind." Even at the altar, "Robert," Gloria exclaimed indignantly. "What kind of thing to say on a day like this? I just want her to know that we will support her in whatever decision she makes." Kayla smiled and kissed her father on the cheek. "Thanks, Dad. But I won't change my mind. Patrick is my choice." The next 2 hours passed in pleasant bustle. At 9 in the morning, the stylist and hairdresser hired by Gloria arrived. The middle-aged woman with her professional tools turned the small guest room into a real beauty salon. "What hairstyle would you like, dear?" she asked, combing Kayla's long brown hair. "Something elegant, but not too complicated. I want to look like myself, only a better version." "I understand. We'll do a low bun with a few loose strands around your face. It will be both festive and natural." While the stylist worked on Kayla's hair, Tisha helped Gloria pack the last few things and check the lists. Robert paced nervously around the house, peeking into the women's room every now and then. "Robert, you'd better go get your suit ready," his wife told him. "And don't forget to wear the new cufflinks we bought especially for this day." At 10:30, the hairstyle was ready. Kayla looked gorgeous, elegant, and yet homely cute. The stylist began applying makeup, using soft, natural tones. "You are a very beautiful bride," she said, applying the finishing touches. "Your groom is a lucky man." At that moment, the phone rang. It was Patrick. "Hi, honey," Kayla heard his calm voice. "How are you? Getting ready?" "Yes, everything is going according to plan. My hair and makeup are done. How are you?" "Great. I just picked up the flowers. They're gorgeous. The bouquet is even more beautiful than the one we chose, and I ironed my suit 3 times. Kayla laughed. 3 times? "Patrick, you know it was perfect after the first time." "I know, but today is a special day. I want to look worthy of my bride." "I love you, Kayla." "I love you too." After talking to Patrick, everyone's mood became even more uplifted. The stylist gathered her tools and wished Kayla happiness. Now came the most exciting part, putting on the wedding dress. The dress was hanging in her parents' bedroom, wrapped in a special cover. Gloria and Tisha carefully removed the protective fabric, and the dress appeared in all its glory. It was an elegant ivory dress with a lace bodice and a long silk skirt. Simple yet sophisticated. Exactly what Kayla had dreamed of. "My goodness, it's so beautiful," whispered Tisha. Every time I see it, I get goosebumps. Putting on the dress turned into a whole ceremony. Gloria fastened the many small buttons on the back, Tisha adjusted the folds of the skirt, and Kayla stood in front of the mirror, unable to believe that the reflection belonged to her. "Mom, what about Grandma's necklace?" she asked. "Of course, dear. Here it is." Gloria took a thin gold chain with a small pearl out of the box, a family heirloom that all the women in their family wore on their wedding day. "Now you have something old, something new, something borrowed, and something blue," said Tisha, pointing to the blue garter she had given her friend. At that moment, the sound of a car pulling up could be heard outside. "That must be Patrick," Gloria said, looking out the window. "Yes, it's him. Robert, go meet your son-in-law." But a few seconds later, her expression changed. "That's strange," she muttered. "That's not Patrick." "It's some other man." Kayla went to the window and looked out. Her heart sank. There was a battered blue car she knew well parked outside the house. Joseph Robinson got out of it. He looked terrible. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair was messy, and he walked unsteadily. Even from a distance, it was clear that he was drunk. "Who is that?" Gloria asked, noticing how pale her daughter had become. "That's Joseph," Kayla replied quietly. "My ex-fiancé." Tisha quickly went to the window. "My God, he really came. Kayla, you have to call Patrick." But at that moment, Joseph was already approaching the front door. He stopped in front of the porch and shouted loudly, "Kayla! I know you're home. Come out. We need to talk." Robert, who heard the shouting, came out onto the porch. "Young man, what do you want?" he asked sternly. "I need to talk to Kayla," Joseph replied, swaying. "She's making the biggest mistake of her life today, and I have to stop her." "You don't belong here. Leave immediately." "I won't leave until I talk to her," Joseph shouted. "Kayla, can you hear me? You can't marry that teacher. We loved each other." Upstairs, Kayla stood by the window, not knowing what to do. Suddenly, her wedding dress felt heavy and uncomfortable. "Kayla, don't go out there," Tisha said. "Let your father handle this." But Joseph's voice was getting louder and more aggressive. "Kayla! I know you can hear me. Do you remember how happy we were? Do you remember our trip to the lake? You said yourself that those were the best days of your life." At that moment, another car pulled up. Patrick got out in his wedding suit, holding a bouquet of flowers. Seeing the stranger shouting outside his fiancée's window, he frowned. "What's going on here?" he asked, approaching Robert. "This is Kayla's ex-fiancé," explained his father-in-law. "He's drunk and wants to talk to her." Patrick looked at Joseph, who continued to shout. "Sir," he said, "today is our wedding day. Please leave, and don't ruin the celebration." Joseph turned to Patrick, his face contorted with rage. "Ah, so this is the guy who stole my bride," he shouted. "You think you can just take my woman? Kayla and I were together for 2 years. 2 years. "You were, but you're not together anymore," Patrick replied calmly. "Kayla made her choice." "She doesn't know what she wants." Joseph took a few steps toward Patrick. "She needs a real man, not this 4 eyes in a suit." "I'm asking you to calm down and leave," Patrick said, trying to remain calm. But Joseph continued to approach, waving his arms. "I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving until I talk to Kayla. Kayla, come down here. Tell this jerk that you still love me." Tisha couldn't take it anymore. She quickly went downstairs and out onto the porch. "Joseph, stop this nonsense," she shouted. "Kayla doesn't want to see you." "Ah, it's her girlfriend," Joseph smirked. "The one who talked her out of being with me. This is all you're doing." "No one talked Kayla out of anything. She realized on her own that you two aren't right for each other." "Liar!" Joseph made a sudden gesture, and Tisha stepped back. "You're all against me, but Kayla loves me. She loves me." At that moment, Patrick stood between Joseph and Tisha. "Enough. You're drunk and out of control. Either you leave on your own, or we call the police." "Call them!" Joseph shouted. "I don't care, but I'm not leaving without Kayla." Tisha was already reaching for her phone when a window opened upstairs and Kayla appeared in her wedding dress. "Joe, please leave," she said, trying to speak calmly. "There's no need to make a scene." At the sight of her in her wedding dress, Joseph fell silent for a few seconds, then suddenly began to cry. "Kayla, you're so beautiful," he sobbed. "You should have worn that dress for me." "We were planning a wedding, remember?" "Joe, that's in the past. We broke up. You know we weren't right for each other." "No," he shouted. "We were perfect together. I know you still love me. You can't love him." He pointed at Patrick. "Look at him. He's not even a man. He can't make you happy." Patrick clenched his fists, but continued to restrain himself. "Joe, you have to listen to me," Kayla continued from the window. "I'm marrying Patrick because I love him. You and I broke up a year ago." "Don't say that." Joseph grabbed his head. "Don't say you love him. It's not true." At that moment, Tisha was already on the phone with the police dispatcher. "Yes, we need help at 123 Maple Street. A drunk man is causing a disturbance and threatening the residents." Joseph heard her words and turned sharply. "You called the cops?" he shouted. "Bitch, you want to get me arrested?" He took a step toward Tisha, but Patrick intercepted him. "Don't you dare talk to her like that," he said firmly. Joseph tried to push Patrick away, but he was stronger than he looked. A small scuffle ensued. Robert also joined in, helping his future brother-in-law restrain the aggressive drunk. "Let me go!" Joseph yelled. "I need to talk to Kayla." "She'll understand me." 10 minutes later, the police arrived. 2 officers quickly assessed the situation and approached Joseph, who was still being held by Patrick and Robert. "Sir, calm down," said one of the officers. "What's going on here?" "Officer," Robert began, "this man is drunk, causing a disturbance at our house and threatening my daughter. Today is her wedding day, and he is interfering with the ceremony." The officer turned to Joseph. "What is your name?" "Joseph Robinson," he muttered, calming down a little at the sight of the uniform. "Mr. Robinson, you are intoxicated and disturbing the peace. We must arrest you. No." Joseph became agitated again. "I haven't done anything wrong. I just wanted to talk to my fiancée." "Who doesn't want to talk to you?" remarked the second officer. "Turn around, hands behind your back." As the police officers handcuffed Joseph, he looked up at the window where Kayla was still standing. "Kayla, don't let them arrest me," he cried. "You know I'm not a bad person, I just love you." The sight of Joseph crying in handcuffs shook Kayla. Despite everything that had happened between them, she couldn't bear to see him so broken. "Wait," she called to the police. Can you not arrest him?" Everyone below turned to her in surprise. "Kayla, what are you saying?" Tisha exclaimed. "Officers," Kayla addressed the police, "he's my ex-fiancé. He's not dangerous, just drunk and upset. Maybe you could just take him home?" One of the officers frowned. "Miss, this man has disturbed the peace and disrupted your event. By law, we must arrest him. I understand, but..." Kayla looked at Joseph, who was looking at her hopefully. "Today is my wedding day, and I don't want it to start with someone getting arrested. Please let him go." "Kayla, you're crazy!" Patrick shouted from below. "After everything he's done!" "Honey, don't," Robert added. "This man could be dangerous." But Kayla was adamant. "Patrick, please." "I know Joe. He won't hurt anyone. He just can't accept our breakup." She looked at the police officers. "As a wedding gift, let him go. Take him home and leave him there." The officers exchanged glances. "What if we let him go and he comes back and bothers you again?" "He won't come back," Kayla said, though she wasn't sure herself. "Right, Joe? You won't interfere with my wedding anymore?" Joseph nodded, tears still streaming down his cheeks. "I promise, Kayla. I just wanted to say goodbye." Patrick moved closer to the police officers. "Officers, I strongly object to this decision. This man is aggressive and unpredictable. I object too, added Tisha. Kayla, you're making a mistake. But Kayla was already walking down the stairs. She stepped out onto the porch in her wedding dress, and everyone fell silent. Joe, she said softly, I'm marrying Patrick. This is my final decision. I ask you to accept it and not interfere with us. Joseph stared at her, unable to look away. Do you really love him? He whispered. Yes. Very much, and you don't love me anymore? Kayla paused, then replied quietly, Joe, what we had is in the past. I want you to find happiness, but not with me. Joseph closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Okay, he said, I understand. He turned to the police officers. Officers, I won't bother Miss Carter anymore. I promise. The police officers exchanged glances again, then one of them removed Joseph's handcuffs. Mr. Robinson, we'll take you home. But if you show up here again or bother this family, we'll arrest you. Understood? Understood. When the police car disappeared around the corner, Patrick approached Kayla. I don't understand why you did that, he said, trying not to raise his voice. Patrick, you saw the state he was in. He's not dangerous. He's just miserable. What if he comes back? He won't. He gave his word. Tisha shook her head. Kayla, you're too kind. Sometimes that can hurt you. Maybe. But today is my wedding day, and I don't want it to start with tears and arrests. Gloria, who had been watching from the window all this time, came downstairs. Well, can we finally go to the church now? She asked. It's already 1:30 and the ceremony is at 2. Patrick took Kayla's hand. Are you ready to be my wife? Kayla smiled. More than ready. Half an hour later, 3 cars left the Carter's house and headed for St. Michael's Church. Robert and Gloria were in the first car, Kayla and Tisha were in the second, and Patrick and his parents were in the third, which joined the procession at the church. The incident with Joseph already seemed like a distant memory. The most important day of Kayla's life lay ahead, and she was determined to make it unforgettable. St. Michael's Church had never looked so solemn. The high Gothic arches were decorated with white lilies and roses, and soft daylight streamed through the stained glass windows, creating colorful reflections on the walls. 237 guests filled the wooden pews, all eagerly awaiting the start of the ceremony. It was exactly 2:00 in the afternoon when the organist began to play the wedding march. Patrick stood at the altar in his impeccable dark blue suit, nervously adjusting his tie. Next to him was his best man, his younger brother Michael, who had flown in from Chicago especially for the wedding. The first to walk down the center aisle were the bridesmaids, Tisha in an elegant lavender dress and Kayla's cousin Rachel. Behind them walked Gloria, arm in arm with the son of family friends, who was standing in for an absent relative of the groom. Finally, to the solemn sounds of the organ, Kayla appeared in the aisle on her father's arm. Her wedding dress rustled across the marble floor, and her long veil fluttered behind her. Robert walked beside her, his shoulders proudly straight, but everyone noticed how he blinked from time to time, holding back tears. Patrick couldn't take his eyes off his bride. At that moment, the morning's incident with Joseph seemed like a distant nightmare. Now there was only him and Kayla, and their love, which was finally receiving official blessing. When the procession reached the altar, Father Brown, an elderly priest with a gray beard who had baptized Kayla herself 28 years ago, raised his hands, calling for silence. Dear brothers and sisters, he began in his deep, commanding voice, we are gathered here today to unite Patrick Lewis and Kayla Carter in holy matrimony. Marriage is one of the most sacred unions, blessed by God and based on mutual love, respect, and devotion. The guests listened attentively to the traditional words of the ceremony. The parents of both sides sat in the front rows, followed by friends, colleagues, and distant relatives. Many of those present had known Kayla since childhood and were genuinely happy to see her so happy. If anyone here knows of a reason why these two should not be united in marriage, let them speak now or forever hold their peace, Father Brown said, following an ancient tradition. The church fell completely silent. Everyone expected the priest to continue with the ceremony when suddenly the heavy wooden doors at the back of the church burst open. Joseph Robinson burst through the doorway. He was wearing the same rumpled clothes he had worn that morning, but now he looked even worse. His eyes were red from alcohol and tears, his hair was disheveled, and he was holding a black pistol in his right hand. "Stop!" he shouted, pointing the gun toward the altar. "Don't continue this ceremony." The guests turned in horror. Some screamed, some instinctively ducked, and several people in the back rows began to quietly make their way toward the side exits. Patrick instinctively stepped forward, shielding Kayla, but she grabbed his arm. "Joe, what are you doing?" she shouted. "Put the gun down." Joseph slowly walked down the center aisle, keeping his weapon raised. The guests in the front rows moved aside, clearing the way for him. "I warned you, Kayla," he shouted as he approached the altar. "I told you it was a mistake." "But you wouldn't listen to me." Father Brown raised his hands in a calming gesture. "My son, put down your weapon. There is no place for violence in God's house." "Shut up, you sanctimonious hypocrite," Joseph barked. "You wanted to marry her to that nobody. But she's mine. Mine." Robert, who was standing next to the altar, took a step toward Joseph. "Young man, think about what you're doing. There are innocent people here, children." "I did think," Joseph shouted. "I thought for 2 years. I suffered for 2 years, knowing that she didn't choose me." He stopped a few meters from the altar and raised the gun higher, aiming directly at Kayla. "If I can't be with you, then no one will." "Joe, please!" Kayla took a step forward, despite Patrick's attempts to hold her back. "You're not like that. You wouldn't hurt me." "Not like this?" Joseph laughed bitterly. "You turned me into this. 2 years ago, I was a normal person, and now I can't sleep. I can't work. I can't live." Tears streamed down his face, but his hand remained steady on the gun. "I tried to forget you, Kayla. I tried to date other women, tried to start a new life, but nothing worked. Because you stole my heart and you won't give it back." The church was deathly silent. Even the babies stopped crying, as if sensing the tension of the moment. "And this morning, when the police were taking me home, I realized," Joseph continued, "I realized that you would never come back to me. And then I decided, if I can't be happy, then neither will you." Patrick slowly raised his hands. "Joseph, I understand that you are suffering. But murder won't solve your problems. It will only create new ones." "Shut up," Joseph yelled, turning the gun toward the groom. "This is all because of you. You stole my woman." "No one stole anyone," Patrick replied calmly. "Kayla made her own choice." "The wrong choice." Joseph pointed the gun at the bride again. "Kayla, this is my last chance. Will you come with me?" Kayla looked into his eyes, full of pain and madness. "No, Joe. I won't go. I love Patrick, and I'm marrying him." Joseph's face contorted with rage and despair. "Then goodbye, my love." He pulled the trigger. The first shot rang out like a thunderclap in the silence of the church. The bullet hit Kayla in the chest, and she fell backward, choking on blood. Her white wedding dress was instantly stained scarlet. "Kayla!" Patrick cried, rushing to her. But Joseph continued to shoot. A second, third, fourth shot. He emptied the entire magazine into his bride, as if to make sure she would never get up again. Panic broke out in the church. Guests screamed, cried, and ran for the exits. Children sobbed. Women fainted. Father Brown fell to his knees next to Kayla, trying to stop the bleeding. But it was too late. Patrick held the bride's head in his lap, his suit covered in blood. "Kayla, hang in there," he whispered through his tears. "Please hang in there." But her eyes were already glazed over, and her breathing was getting weaker. "Patrick," she whispered barely audibly. "I love..." Those were her last words. Kayla Carter died in her fiancé's arms on her wedding day, never living to become his wife. Patrick held her lifeless body to his chest and wept like a child. His world had collapsed in a single second. The woman he loved more than life itself, who was to be the mother of his children, lay dead in his arms. "No, no, no," he cried. "Kayla, come back, don't leave me." He stroked her hair, kissed her forehead, begged her to open her eyes, but no miracle happened. Joseph stood over the bodies and looked at the result of his actions. The gun fell from his hands and clattered onto the marble floor. "What have I done?" he whispered. "My God, what have I done?" But when he saw that Patrick was still alive and crying over Kayla's body, something clicked in his head. "Why are you still alive?" he shouted. "You have to die too." He bent down to pick up the gun, but at that moment, Patrick raised his head. There was no longer fear in his eyes, only boundless rage. Carefully placing Kayla's body on the marble steps of the altar, Patrick slowly rose. Joseph was still trying to raise his weapon when the history teacher lunged at him. "You killed her!" Patrick shouted, striking blow after blow. "You killed my Kayla!" He wasn't very strong physically, but his rage gave him superhuman strength. Joseph, weakened by alcohol and the shock of what he had done, was unable to resist. Patrick beat him with his fists and feet until he stopped moving. The killer's blood mixed with his victim's on the floor. By the time the police, called by frightened guests, burst into the church, Joseph Robinson was lying unconscious, and Patrick was sitting next to his fiancée's body, holding her hand. "Officer," he said quietly to one of the policemen, "arrest me. I almost killed this man." "Sir, under the circumstances, your actions can be considered self-defense and protection of others." But Patrick couldn't hear anything anymore. He leaned over Kayla again, whispering words of love that she would never hear. Robert and Gloria Carter stood apart, holding each other. They had lost their only daughter on what should have been the happiest day of their lives. Tisha sat on one of the benches, sobbing into her hands. She blamed herself for not insisting on Joseph's arrest that morning. Maybe then things would have been different. When the ambulance arrived, the doctors just shrugged their shoulders. Kayla had been dead for half an hour. Joseph, though beaten, survived. He was taken to the hospital under guard and then charged with first-degree murder. St. Michael's Church was empty. Only white lilies and roses reminded us that a wedding was supposed to take place here. Now, this place will forever remain in the memory of those present as a place of tragedy. Patrick Lewis never recovered from the loss of his beloved. He took a leave of absence from school, then submitted his resignation. Rumor had it that he had moved to another state, but no one knew exactly where. Joseph Robinson was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. At the trial, he was unable to explain what had driven him to commit this heinous crime. Kayla Carter was buried in the very wedding dress she was supposed to wear when she got married. There are always fresh flowers on her grave. Patrick sends them every week, even though he hasn't been in town for many years. Sometimes kindness can be a curse, and mercy can be a sentence. If Kayla hadn't begged the police to let Joseph go that morning, she might still be alive. But she couldn't have done otherwise. That was her nature. And now, when wedding ceremonies are held at St. Michael's Church, the old-timers always remember that terrible day on June 28th, when the altar was stained with the bride's blood, and the words of love were drowned out by the killer's shots.